Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
My anus is bleeding!
He can't sit down.
They call them dumps, big massive dumps.
Got a flame coming out of his butthole.
Beta bear.
Get in a long tube with a bunch of demons.
Don't you ever do that. Don't you ever do that. I tell you, don't do it.
Oops.
We're under attack. It is an alien force, not of this world. It's not human intelligence.
Bullshit.
Trust me, I'm like a smart person.
Bullshit.
It's not a salami sandwich.
Disappointed!
Repeat the line.
Disappointed!
How you like that, boy?
No.
Give me a break.
Stop it.
Fired.
Fired!
Bitch, move it along.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
And why their due process rights are being so flagrantly and horrifically violated.
Bullshit.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. Boy, we've got a heavy Tuesday. So, everybody, grab your tacos. Taco Tuesday. And strap in. It'll be a heavy show. First, we have some prisoner exploitation going on. It's a story related to Herschel Walker, one of his companies, a chicken plant. We've got that. We have some fun with Marjorie Greene. We have a teacher. I'm sorry, not a teacher. We have someone who is running for a school board pushing patriotic education. So-called patriotic education. We also are going to talk about a climate newsletter with an interesting sponsor. And then finally, we have corporate media busted. And I'm talking about corporate mainstream media pushing right-wing narratives about crime. We're going to go through and debunk it. So, and how the media is doing an awful, awful job when it comes to the narrative surrounding the crime rate. How it benefits the right wing. All right, so with that, we'll start out with the Herschel Walker story. But before we do, please like and share the stream. Very important that you do so. Again, it helps us out greatly. And again, thank you for tuning in. Let's do it. Oh boy. It appears that a company in business with Herschel Walker has been using exploited prison labor. This shouldn't be a surprise. Nonetheless, let me give you the details. According to federal court records reviewed by the Associated Press, Walker's food distributor business has gotten a boost through a firm he touts as a principal partner and supplier from unpaid prison labor. So these are prisoners, by the way, that have been arrested as a result mainly of the war on drugs. These are people who have fallen prey to addiction and have went to jail. And so Herschel Walker says, yummy, yummy, we're going to let our friends exploit them. Shocker. Now, lawyers for participants in the program, an Oklahoma-based outfit named Christian Alcoholics and Addicts in Recovery, supposedly you're supposed to help these people, by offering them job training, things like that. Well, no, it turns out they're just working for no wages. In fact, these participants, these lawyers, claim that the program is less of a rehabilitation service for inmates and more of a work camp that profits from vulnerable workforces, and mainly, of course, minorities. Now, look, this is not something that's new. This is not something that, oh my God, we're shocked that this is happening in America, that prison labor is being exploited. No, this is, unfortunately, a very normal thing that happens. You have prison labor that is underpaid, or unpaid, I should say, overworked, and are put in terrible conditions that are slightly better than prison. And so you might be wondering, okay, so we know this happens already. Why is this news? Well, for one, it should be. Just because someone is a prisoner doesn't mean they should be treated like a slave. Yes, I know, just because it's legal doesn't make it right or moral for these companies to do. And in fact, I would argue that it is immoral. Yes, you may have done a crime, but that doesn't mean that you lose your basic human freedoms, your basic human rights to respect, and that you should be forced to, do slave labor. But now you would also think that Herschel Walker, you'd think that he would understand. Again, he claims to be a good religious man, right? And you think that, he would attempt to maybe contract with companies who pay their workforce fairly and treat them at least decently as a decent human being. But no, apparently not. As the Associated Press details, the Christian Alcoholics and Addicts in Recovery, or CARE, began more than a decade ago sending residents to work at Simmons Food Incorporated, a company that Walker touts as a principal partner and supplier to his distributorship, Renaissance Man Food Services. State judges assigned convicted offenders to CARE, letting them choose between the residential program and traditional incarceration. So now, look, let's be honest, I'm not against the idea of allowing prisoners to choose to work instead of rot behind bars. I actually think that idea of allowing them to work is fine and will actually translate into maybe something better, helping them rehabilitate, get into society. My issue here is the exploitation part. You're exploiting people in prison by not paying them any wages and treating them poorly while they're there. Again, this is working at a chicken plant. Now, Simmons would contract for labor with CARE, whose participants, again, were unpaid. And so not only, again, were they not paid, but they were treated poorly. They were threatened, if their work was unsatisfactory, back to prison. This kind of reminds me of how companies also treat undocumented labor. They go through some of the same kind of treatment, except without being imprisoned. But they're sort of imprisoned by their own circumstances, as they can also be exploited and paid substandard wages. And if they ever complain about wages or working conditions, well then, we're just going to report you to ICE then. We're going to get you deported and possibly killed. But in this case, it's, well, okay, would you rather just go back to prison then? Now, the federal lawsuit pending against CARE and Simmons detailed how some participants were also allegedly pressured to work when they were injured, compelled to attend religious services, and threatened with imprisonment if their work was unsatisfactory. CARE participants also alleged in court that they did not always provide necessary rehabilitative and psychiatric treatment, the kind that they had, I guess, promised, they had emphasized. And look, Walker himself is like, oh yeah, no, you got to get that rehabilitative and psychiatric treatment. Okay, but you're contracting with a company that doesn't provide that. Now, CARE described its services in court filings as a, quote, combination of work therapy and spiritual and religious counseling. Sure, okay, but how are you supposed to go through any of that? Talk to professional counselors, get set up with education, advancement opportunities, get some skills training to help you when you're on the outside. How are you supposed to get any of that if you're working full-time in a chicken plant? That's not good skills. Well, of course, that's the point. They can't. They just need bodies there. That's it. Bodies that they can because honestly, you think the average American worker, and this is also why these same kinds of chicken plants, meat producers, end up going with undocumented labor, because the kind of working conditions that they have there, regular American workers would be outraged. So of course they use prison labor, and of course they use undocumented labor. And by the way, it saves these companies tons and tons of money. So now that said, because of how this country treats prisoners, a trial court judge in 2020 had rejected the participants' assertions that CARE had violated federal labor law. Because apparently we don't believe that prisoners have rights in this country. That instead the corporations have all the rights to exploit whoever they want. And in this case, again, people who are incarcerated. It's gross. It's horrifying. Again, the law and society care so little about prisoners. Again, these are people, again, yes, I understand that they have committed a crime. I understand that they're there in order to repay their debt to society. That doesn't mean that they should be allowed to be exploited and used by heartless corporations. Again, and we're not even talking about people who are, murderers and rapists that are doing these work programs. No, we're talking about mainly drug offenders or minorities. So no, again, how does Walker fit into the story specifically? Well, again, the report notes that neither Walker nor Renaissance Man Food Services was named as a defendant in this lawsuit. So let's be fair. However, when you ask Walker, when people have asked Walker about this, his role, well, in his story, Simmons is a very key component of his success. Again, the company that is contracting prison labor. On the Renaissance website, for example, Simmons is the only supplier or partner mentioned by name. RMFS joins with Simmons Food to bring quality products to retail and food service marketplace. By the way, people, let me just address that for a second. You think people that are, forced to work in terrible working conditions, yes, I know they agreed to it, but the other choice is prison. So not much of a choice there. You think they're going to, in these bad working conditions, put out the best quality products? No. And of course, with deregulation that we have, think about it this way. When Republicans talk about deregulation, you know what they found in our food? Hair and feces and sausage. When you think deregulation, think hair and feces in your food, because that's what happens. So you think these prisoners, and I'm not knocking their ability, but again, going back to the working conditions here, you think you're going to be able to put out a healthy quality product that is not filled with hair and feces? Think about it for a second. Maybe they need to be regulated more, and maybe we need to have a higher quality, and no, again, no shame in the prisoners here, but a higher paid, respected workforce to do these things. So, that's it. The website also highlights one of its locations as Siloam Springs, Arkansas, where Simmons is based, and the relationship dates back as early as 2006, according to Walker's previous statements to the media, which again, when Walker makes a statement, you really have to, kind of take it with a grain of salt, because he has said a lot of insane things. Nonetheless, there is documentation here showing this partnership. Renaissance also advertises as a certified minority-owned business, obviously, that works with supplier partners to meet the needs of our retail and food service customers, which suggests a relationship in which Walker partners with food processing firms to act as a distributor, so that end-of-line business is buying from a minority-owned firm, right? But a minority-owned firm that is exploiting minorities, that's also not a good thing. CARE, meanwhile, bills itself as a faith-based enterprise. Its programs had launched in 2008 with 6 men, according to its website, and by 2015 housed 203 dorms. Throughout the litigation, Simmons and CARE have defended their practices, but one thing has never been up for dispute: the fact that they do not pay the people in the chicken plant. Participants, they say, perform work without compensation at various nearby work providers, including Simmons. Lawyers wrote in the program's defense, this requirement is no secret. In court filings, the clients, this is, again, a lawyer defending the program, they said that their clients are not employees, and that they point out that participants signed documents stipulating that CARE did not offer them a job and that they would not receive wages. Simmons pays care for the work performed by care participants at a rate well above minimum wage, which again, they don't pay them at all, so that doesn't make any sense. And then added that there were examples of an admission agreement that promises work training at a job site, along with the requirement of working at a designated job site. The documents do not name any prospective companies, explain any jobs, or detail any training. Participants were free to leave the program, the document states, at any time, but such an action could result in consequences from the criminal justice system for early departure. So, on the one hand, they're totally free to leave if they want, but they're going to face consequences, which means prison. So it's work for free or go back to prison, which doesn't really seem like much of a choice, as I said before. In a federal case against another not-for-profit rehabilitation program, Simmons again defended its practices in a 2020 friend of the court brief filed in support of DARP Inc. Citing Simmons' relationship with CARE, Simmons' lawyers wrote that CARE operates in the same basic model as DARP to provide vocational opportunities for those struggling with addiction. Participants work to achieve their own rehabilitation, not for the benefit of DARP or any for-profit firm, the brief states. Further, the lawyers asserted that unpaid laborers receive a benefit beyond money. Oh, God, money, beyond money. Oh, what kind of benefit? Quote, a sense of self-worth and accomplishment. Oh, so let's see, it's better than money. You get self-worth, everybody. That's what happens. You just get that instead of a paycheck. Really? No, it's exploitation. Pure and simple. And again, this is something that, again, is not unique to Herschel Walker. It just so happens that he's just a newer example of this that has been going on for some time. Look, what we need to do, looking beyond the politics of the issue, is to have a national conversation about corporations, about our carceral system being set up for this kind of abuse that they can use for profit. And again, it's not just corporations, it's governments. California uses prison labor to fight fires. Oftentimes, people that are fighting fires, the prisoners are not given good safety equipment to use. Gee, it's almost as if their lives are devalued because simply they are prisoners. Because they committed a crime, they did something wrong in this society. Again, they're not letting out the serial killers and the rapists to do the jobs. You think they're going to let those people out? No, of course not. It's the low-level drug offenders, the people that were unlucky enough to get addicted to drugs or to be caught possessing them. And by the way, there are, despite Biden's, order to let people out of federal prisons for marijuana specifically, right? Remember, that's just a federal prison. There are state prisons all over the country where you have low-level drug offenders, people that had possession of marijuana that are in prison that are also being exploited by these same so-called work programs. And these are because of draconian laws that are passed. And again, now there's a business set up on this. So now you have people that, again, being exploited for labor, and lawmakers who are, funded by these same corporations are now encouraged to do more tough on crime laws to then allow these corporations to have access to more cheap labor. That's what's going on here. That's the reality of this system. Look, if Walker or anybody else cared about these people, he would ensure that at least his organization would contract with people who, paid a fair wage and allowed these people that he says he's trying to help be rehabilitated, get access to actual rehabilitation, and not just work as a unpaid slave to these corporations. Anything else is deeply immoral. And we can see exactly who these people like Herschel Walker are. And they are deeply immoral. Okay. Anyway, let's move on. I know, heavy story to start off with, but why don't we dive into a little bit more fun? Over the decades, investors in Trump-related ventures have usually ended up burned. While the alleged billionaire, of course, skips away to bankruptcy court, at least 5, maybe 6 times. Now, the newest person to lose out on a Trump-related venture is actually Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. Oh, wow. Oh, look at that.
Peachtree dish.
Well, according to a Business Insider, Greene has lost thousands of dollars on an investment she made in a company that is actually expected to merge with
Truth Social.
Truth Social. That's right. So now the report says that Greene invested an amount between $15,001 and $50,000 in Digital World Acquisition Corp. in October of last year. The value of the company's stock has actually plummeted by more than 82% since then. Wow. So that's incredibly disastrous. And the report estimates that Greene lost between $12,330 and $41,100 on that one investment. Again, the reason for these ranges is because we don't exactly know how much she invested. She hasn't made that clear. So there you go. Nonetheless, I know that if I lost $12,000, oh my God, if I still had hair, I'd pull it all out. That's an enormous amount of money. I would never financially recover. Honestly. Wow. And look, that's a lot of money to invest and then lose in a pump and dump scam. But that's exactly what it was. So now, per the report, Digital World Acquisition Corp is what is known as a Special Purpose Acquisition Company, or a SPAC. And it's basically a blank check company, and it's used for the sole purpose of circumventing initial public offering process, you know, where you would actually have to talk about what your business is going to do, how it's actually going to make you a return on investment. This skips all of that. And yeah, makes it's a perfect vehicle, again, for a pump and dump scheme. Now, according to a financial disclosure document published by Business Insider, Greene made her first investment just days after the company announced plans for a merger deal with Truth Social's parent company, Trump Media and Technology Group. Two companies have struggled to complete that deal, which must be done before December. Digital World Acquisition Corp CEO Patrick Orlando, unfortunately, has delayed a shareholder vote to extend the deadline for the deal 4 times, citing doubts about whether the company could meet the required threshold of at least 65% approval among investors to extend the merger deadline. So you're doing really, really well. Nailing it. Well, that's a business that you definitely want to make an investment in. But wait, there could be a method or madness behind the method. Behind this investment, there could be a point. I'll get to that. So now, Business Insider also found that one other Republican member of Congress, Representative Larry Bouchon of Indiana, also invested in Digital World Acquisition Corp. The report estimates that Bouchon has invested an amount between $1,001 and $15,000 and lost between $800 to $12,000 on that purchase. Oops. Yikes. Oh, what was that?
They call them dumps, big, massive dumps.
Yeah, dumping your money and flushing it down the toilet.
People are flushing toilets 10 times, 15 times.
Yikes. Again, we're very smart with money. We're Republicans. We're supposed to be really, really good on economic issues, except that every time we make an investment, we lose our shirt unless we're, rigging the system in our favor. But okay. Anyway, hardly surprising. Now, the company, for one, and this is the reason why Truth Social is an absolute disaster, even if it wasn't set up as a pump and dump scheme. First of all, the thing is headed up by Donald Trump. Okay? Automatic recipe for disaster because he's a terrible businessman. And you can just have to look at his record. Secondly, it's run by former California Representative Devin Nunes, who tried to sue a fake cow. And he lost. That's the best part. He lost against a fake cow. Okay. Now, the other reason, of course, is the product itself. It's incredibly niche. Remember, this True Social was only made for people who are right-wing MAGA fans to sit in a circle and circle jerk each other off. Basically. Look, are you going to have, like, libs be on that platform? No. Nobody's going to want to sign up for that platform. If you're a lib or a left-winger, you know, you're not interested in this. So it's going to stay very, very small, very niche, right? And not only that, but look, it's not really going to have very good advertising. Will there be advertising? Yeah, at some point. But what it's going to be is the people who, you know, sell sketchy gold, dick pills, or prepper buckets, or the combination of all three. But that's it. That's it. And so they're not going to have that many people who stay and be active. And by the way, getting back to the fact that you're not going to have liberals that are, you know, the left that's going to join that. What fun is it for the right? Again, the right wants to own the libs, right? That's why they're on Twitter. That's why they're hate watching. That's why they do all this stuff, right? Well, without them, without people to own, what are you doing? You're just going to sit and jerk each other off. That's it. And by the way, there are people that will stay, of course, and guess what? Their rhetoric is going to continue to go more and more and more extreme. And we've seen studies do that. And so, but aside from all of that, just the whole, you know, point that the business model is not going to be successful in any way, shape, or form, it's also facing a lot of turmoil and infighting. In fact, there was one occasion in which Trump reportedly pressured an executive to gift several of his company's shares to Melania. Yes, but real hands-off, though, on the company. Yeah, no, totally being fair, right? Now, that article came just shy of 2 months after a Fox Business report said that True Social was experiencing serious financial trouble. According to that report, the social media platform at the time owed $1.6 million in missed monthly payments to its web hosting service. That service, of course, is a right-wing company, proudly right-wing. And even they're tired of their crap. Like, hey, are you actually going to pay us? Are you actually going to give us money? If you don't, we're going to have to shut you down. So please, give us something. Give us something. But here's the thing. Anybody who has to deal with Trump knows that he doesn't pay people what he owes. This is a well-documented, well-known fact. You still have cities that Trump has refused to pay for his security arrangements when it came to events, campaign events in those cities. Still won't pay him. Still won't pay him. So yeah, and by the way, getting back to Trump's business history, and not the real history, or not the, you know, fake history, but the real history, right? The fake history, people have been sold for years and years by even mainstream media, right? That he's a great businessman and that he's made so much money because of his sound business decisions and his great business mind. Look at The Apprentice. No, The Apprentice saved his ass from bankruptcy. And it would be, what, the 5th, 6th bankruptcy? No, anyone who has paid attention to that real history knows that if you invest in a Trump product, you're going to lose. You're going to lose your investment. So then why would Marjorie Greene invest? Well, there's, again, one of two, and maybe both of these can apply. One, Marjorie Greene is an idiot, and she doesn't know what she's investing in. She doesn't know what a sound investment really is. That's probably true. But here's the second thing. Likely her investment could also be paying off in a different way. You've probably seen the news that she is being considered to be Trump's running mate. So if you look at it in this way and consider her investment what it might actually be, not an investment, but maybe more of a payoff, a bribe, if you will, to get into a position of power, then it starts to make a little bit more sense. But I don't know. Okay. Let's go to unpatriotic education. Here's another Republican candidate is pushing to force public school students into learning right-wing propaganda. Now, Ryan Walters is a Republican candidate for state superintendent in Oklahoma. And basically, he's promising to force all teachers in the state to undergo what is being described as patriotic education at a right-wing college located in Michigan. As Tulsa World reports, Walters believes that this intervention is needed because teachers in the state are purportedly indoctrinating students with leftist bias. So understand, there's no truth in that narrative whatsoever. Leftist, what are you talking about? Leftist bias. What? Oh, you mean believing in science? You know, scientific fact that's been proven, that's been tested. Oh no, that's propaganda. Obviously. Oh yes. So now the response to this is interesting, and it tells a lot. Because he says, well, we think that you're indoctrinating students, so you know what we're going to do? We're going to indoctrinate them the other way. Wait, what? No, that's bizarre. That's ridiculous. Look, here's what he said. What I will do is I will put together courses. I've been talking to Hillsdale College on this. It's the Michigan college. They're great. They're great. And have every U.S. history teacher and every history teacher in the state go through that training so that they know the basics, and that every kid will have a teacher who is learned on U.S. history, on the Constitution, on those fundamental principles. Now, in theory, that doesn't sound bad. That sounds good. I want everybody to be learned. I want everybody to know, a historical fact and accuracy. So then, will they be taught about the, rules of slavery? Taught facts about the Civil War, Jim Crow, anti-immigrant policies that affected, yes, Europeans as well as later on, Chinese laborers on the railroads. Very exclusionary policies that are a response to, immigration. Are they going to talk about some of the pro-worker rights rebellions that happened in this country? They're talking about the fact that, for example, West Virginia, you had striking mine workers having shootouts with corporate-owned police in order to gain workers' rights. Are we going to learn about that? Are you going to teach about that? That's very, very fascinating history of workers' rights in this country. How about the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire? That's a good example. Is that the case? No. You're not going to be surprised what they want to teach. In fact, local news station KOCO noted that in the past, Walters had said patriotic education would actually have a distinct religious flavor. He said, what we have to have is true history taught in schools. Our kids need to know about the founding. They need to know this country was founded on Judeo-Christian values. So look, drop the Judeo, because they don't ever really mean it when they say Judeo-Christian. They just mean Christian nationalism. That's it. He added, they need to know about the Constitution. They need to be inspired by heroes like Washington. George Washington, let me give you some information about George Washington. It turns out he and the Founding Fathers were deists. Yes, deists. They set up a secular government, and they did so for a reason, a very important reason. And don't take my word for it, take their words for it. Here's James Madison. Quote, the purpose of separation of church and state is to keep forever from these shores the ceaseless strife that has soaked the soil of Europe with blood for centuries. Yes, I would also like to avoid that. Thomas Jefferson, in a letter to the Danbury Baptists, said this, quote, believing with you that religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God, that he owes account to none other for his faith or his worship, that the legislative powers of government reach actions only and not opinions, I contemplate with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. Not only that, speaking of George Washington signed a treaty between the United States and Tripoli, right? Now, a treaty of peace and friendship between the United States and Tripoli that was approved by Washington stated this: the government of the United States is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. Judeo-Christian values, not so much. And in the Constitution itself, the First Amendment says this: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of. In Article 5, Section 3, no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. So, you could really say, without a doubt, that secular humanists actually do draw inspiration from these beliefs of the founder of the nation. And that we actually do know the Constitution, and these people don't. This dipshit doesn't. He doesn't know anything about what he's talking about. He's actually preaching against the Constitution and against the founder's intent, at least when it comes to religion. No, what he's doing is trying to fit right-wing ideology where it shouldn't be. He is teaching ideology. He has an ideological bent and is trying to put propaganda into the schools. He is a religious zealot who is trying to pervert the government, just like other religious zealots have perverted their own religion to service right-wing goals. Now, how did the teachers feel about this? Well, very strongly, actually. Local news station Fox 23 in the summer reported that many Oklahoma teachers are actively dreading Walter's tenure as superintendent, with one teacher telling the station that they may quit on the spot if he is elected. This is a great example of how local elections really, really matter. All the way down, again, to your school board, superintendents, all of it matters. The right wing has engineered a takeover at all levels of government. They use the media, they use their own talking points, utter fabrications, and, misinterpret the Constitution, misinterpret the intent of the founding fathers, who, by the way, not perfect, not nearly perfect. But part of being a patriot is being able to critique those same people and to be honest about what this country is about and the history of this country, which these people cannot be because it ruins their Christian nationalism. That's why you do need to get involved in your local elections to stop these Christian nationalists from taking over and perverting the very history they swear to protect. They're not protecting anything but their own power. All right. Let's go to the next story. That's something you'll never actually legitimately see here. A new climate-focused media outlet is getting panned by journalists for literally being paid for by one of the largest polluters in the world. So now this newsletter is called Semaphore, which claims they aim to distinguish themselves from legacy media outlets with their own unique article structures, which launched last week as a free advertising-supported media site, but would then evolve into a paywalled subscription model in about 12 to 18 months after gaining brand recognition, according to an article with CNBC. Journalist Bill Spindle wrote for Monday's newsletter, Semaphore Climate will be taking the temperature of the politics, technology, and energy markets influencing global warming. Oh, does that sound interesting? Well, here we are. So I love how it says, and this is the headline, right? So today I delve into Europe's efforts to get off Russian gas and the U.S. campaign to assure the EU's ban on Russian oil doesn't send crude prices soaring. And feeling anxious about climate change? Study shows that you're not alone. But an electric Rolls-Royce could make you feel better. You can afford it. Who is this geared towards? I don't see average people reading that and going, oh, yeah, no, definitely. If we could afford that Rolls-Royce, totally get it. Most people can't afford a normal electric car or even a normal car. Are you kidding me? Who is this aimed towards? But it's worse, by the way. It's worse than bad writing because guess what? It turns out one of the sponsors is, well, Chevron. Message from our sponsor. We believe the fuels of the future can come from some very unexpected places at Chevron. We're working with partners in California to convert the methane from cow waste into renewable natural gas. Find out more. So that's ridiculous. Okay. Now, science journalist Joe Brown noted that this ag capture project in the ad is as bad as greenwashing gets, saying it's a natural gas plant. So look, greenwashing, you may have heard it before. Let me give you a quick definition. It's basically the practice of making brands, corporate brands, appear more sustainable than they really are. Now, one of the ways that they try to do that is carbon offsets or carbon credits, which doesn't actually offset anything. Now, another example of greenwashing is calling things natural, clean, biodegradable, renewable, when they're actually not any of those things. Especially natural gas. Natural gas, not a renewable. Okay? But they say that we care about the environment. We care about cutting emissions. Well, no, as Common Dreams notes, while Chevron says they claim to support the Paris Agreement, for example, which is the bare minimum, I would say, and last year adopted a 2050 net zero aspiration for equity upstream scope 1 and 2 emissions, the company faces criticism for not cutting any pollution. So, you know. And look, there's a reason. It's because that's their business model. If they cut pollution, they would be cutting their own profit margins. Their business model is pollution. That's why they're doing this, by the way. Look, Chevron knows that they have a PR problem. And they have a PR problem because it turns out people are starting to care about the environment. Is it everybody's top priority? No. And you can look at polls, but that doesn't mean people don't care. By the way, it should be a much, much higher priority than it really is. People are starting to care about the environment because of the effects of climate change. And so the new way of doing PR, apparently, is to try to distance themselves from legacy media and instead sponsor what is now independent media, which isn't independent at all. In fact, previewing Semaphore in June, New York Times reported that the co-founders, the newspaper's former media columnist Ben Smith and ex-Bloomberg media CEO Justin Smith, no relation, said that it would tackle the lack of trust in media and compete for English language readers against outlets like CNN, The Times, and The Washington Post. Oh, the lack of trust. This is so ironic. Oh, incredibly ironic. Yet we are going to tackle the lack of trust in media by being sponsored by the biggest polluter, one of the biggest polluter in the world. Okay, yeah, great. Oh, you're really, really good at engendering trust. Amazing. And again, doing so by pretending to be independent when you've got that giant corporate sponsorship. Well done. Well done. That earns
Bullshit.
That earns a bullshit. Do you really believe that a climate newspaper or newsletter, sponsored by a major polluter is going to be honest about the sponsor? No. And yet here they are claiming to not be biased against their sponsor. It's ridiculous. Now, progressives like David Sirota of The Lever pointed this out. Here's what he wrote. What stage of media is it when climate newsletter brought to you by the industry destroying the climate is the ascendant business model? Well, I mean, to be fair, they're going to be going paywall in 12 to 18 months. So that means, of course, nobody's going to read it. Well, good. Maybe you should up that timetable because maybe nobody should be reading your garbage. Andrew Perez, another great, writer at The Lever, said this, quote, "It's great that more companies are adopting the Politico playbook Axios punch bowl model where they let horrible companies actively lie to their readers for money." And look, there's an example of this, right? and there's an article in The Lever back from October of 2021, but it's excellent. And I want to share some of that with you about this entire situation. They write, "This new foundation of political news was originally constructed by the now disgraced Washington gossip Mark Halperin and his ABC News email called The Note, a publication founded in January 2002 as an internal staff memo proudly boasting that it only cared about the so-called Gang of 500 people in Washington who allegedly matter." Great. Wonderful. Today's copycats like Politico, Punchbowl, and Axios have made this arrangement even more explicit. Their innovation was baking corporate ideology directly into their news via snarky voice and so-called native advertising. In practice, their primary raison d'etre is not to publish accountability reporting, but instead to play tone policeman and frame the parameters of the policy discourse so that it best guarantees outcomes that corporate sponsors want. They also added that in the rip and read world of news and politics, these newsletters are the talking points torn out by pundits, TV bookers, lobbyists, and then turned into newspaper columns, two-camera diatribes, and pitches to lawmakers. They are, in other words, the prefabricated scripts distributed throughout news industry superstructure, wrapped in the veneer of objectivity, and then blasted out to the general population under the banner of corporate media mastheads. Wow. The Lever's reporting the Washington gossip rags that are quite literally presented by a rogues gallery of corporate villains trying to buy politicians and kill the reconciliation bill, highlighted sponsorship by Chevron, ExxonMobil, HCA Healthcare, Facebook, or now Meta, Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, Pharma, and Uber. The week after that report was published, by the way, Edith's Emily Atkin and Earther's Molly Taft examined recent fossil fuel industry sponsorships, Punchbowl, and climate-related newsletters from Axios and Politico, and guess what they found? Well, they found that, of course, tends to be on the pro-corporate side. Weird. Representatives for the media outlets did tell those journalists that newsletter content is independent from advertising. Atkin and Taft wrote that the responses appear to misunderstand the issue being raised. Quote, "No one claims big oil's ads influence the reporting of these news outlets. The issue is that news outlets are using their own quality reporting to sell advertisers on opportunities to spread misinformation on their platforms and make a lot of money from it. And are making a lot of money from it." Look, the issue here, for me, is the corporate control over what we see and hear on the news. I do think that there is a bias. I do believe it is it's not pro-Democrat, it's not pro-Republican bias, right? It's pro-corporate. And look, we know that it's pro corporate, and we know that there are shows and there are news programs and television stations. Again, all this corporate media. I mean, you look in MSNBC, for example. They're always airing ads about how awesome natural gas is. Oh, natural gas, clean fuel, great fuel, best fuel. Oh, natural gas, making everything great, wonderful. And you wonder why they would, squashed, because I remember Chris Hayes doing a very large report about climate change and getting it squashed by MSNBC. That's an example of how it does absolutely bias in favor of corporate advertisers. Pharmaceutical ads are pretty much the same thing. You really ever talk about on mainstream news how the real drug dealers in this country are big corporations? How it's really the fault of, Sackler family, pushing like opioids on people. Sorry, I can't say that word for some reason. Oxycontin onto people, getting them addicted, then going to harder drugs. You really see a lot of reporting on that. Maybe now after the fact, but you still have all of these. Do you see reports about how these companies like Pfizer have raised prices on a lot of these different drugs, including vaccines, life-saving vaccines, when all of this stuff should be free for every American, like in every other developed country? That's the effect that corporate advertising has. And by the way, so many people who watch these corporate news sources only specifically. Now, look, if you watch, like, for example, a lot of people will watch like a show on MSNBC, they'll watch CNN, they'll watch some YouTube channels from, Rational National, TYT, this show, Nina Turner, all these different, okay, if you have this different base of things that you get your information from, then you are in the know. But if you're watching MSNBC exclusively or CNN, you're not hearing these stories. You're not hearing about what's really going on with corporate America and how they are screwing us over every single day and controlling what you hear and you see in order to make profits. That's the reality of what's going on. And so when you have a situation, and we do have this situation, where these very companies that are obliterating the climate are now doing propaganda to not only muddy the waters, but also to pretend they care about, to help their PR. Well, no, that's just what they're doing, PR, so they can continue to do business as usual while claiming to, oh no, we've got clean technology, we've got all this stuff in the works, so don't you worry about that. No, it's all BS. And it also shows you why independent media, really independent media, not fake independent media, is so incredibly important. Okay. One more media story. You've been watching mainstream media, for example, CNN, Fox News, NPR, or you've read the New York Times, the Washington Post. You might be worried about crime. Oh, there's crime everywhere. Yeah, everybody's criming. Now, that said, national statistics do show a spike in violent crime, and it is concerning. But if you've watched or read any of these media outlets, where do they say the fault lies? Democrats, progressives. I can't believe they would defund the police. Oh, the entire city's burning down. Really? Really? Well, for one, nobody defunded the police. And secondly, the Democrats actually funded police more. But see, understand that these outlets are playing into election narratives, specifically from the right wing Republicans, that blame both individual incidents and broad nationwide trends on the left. According to a Media Matters analysis, the coverage often fails to debunk these GOP narratives or note that any violent crime or that the level of violent crime has also risen in Republican-run areas. So you never hear about that. All you hear about is Democrat cities, it's full of crime, Los Angeles, New York, the increase in the crime rate. But it turns out that no, according to statistics, you also have increasing crime all over the country, not just in Democrat areas. All right. So let me give you an example here of some of this reporting. Again, according to this Media Matters analysis, Republicans have hyped the specter of crime to an absurd degree. Numerous stories have taken the bait, featuring snippets of GOP ads, quotes, and Republicans emphasizing narratives, blaming Democratic policies, or focusing on crime in Democratic-run areas, and or focusing on polling, showing that voters prefer Republicans to Democrats on crime. All of this, of course, is related. So these examples, a September 26 New York Times article headline, GOP redoubles efforts to tie Democrats to high crime areas, included all of these talking points, all of these narratives. An October 5th Politico article headlined, midterm voters key in on crime, noted that Republicans relentlessly tied Democrats to a pandemic-era rise in crime on the campaign trail and TV ads. An October 15th article from The Hill headlined, Republicans ride crime wave, worries in midterms home stretch, reported that Republicans up and down the ballot are working to make worries about a crime wave translate to a red wave, citing one political ad in Illinois, quoting one Republican gubernatorial candidate, and citing multiple polls on the issue, including ones saying voters think Republicans are better suited to deal with crime than Democrats. And on October 20th, NPR's All Things Considered aired a segment which bore the online headline, Democrats are embracing police, but can that distract from crime in their cities? An October 25th Associated Press story on the New York gubernatorial race also explained that Republicans around the country are closing with a message that follows closely to what Lee Zeldin has argued much of the year. In recent debates from Georgia to Michigan and Wisconsin, GOP contenders have blasted Democrats as inattentive to crime. And on October 21st, NBC News correspondent Daisha Burns aired a segment on MSNBC's Morning Joe pushing GOP narratives on crime in Pennsylvania. In none of these examples, point out that while Republicans are blaming Democrats for violent crime is nearly as high or worse in Republican-run parts of the country. All of that critical context is missing, gone, left out. Maybe on purpose. Now, in June, the Wall Street Journal reported that violent crime isn't just rising in the nation's cities. Murder rates across the rural U.S. have soared during the pandemic. From the article, homicide rates in rural America rose 25% in 2020, according to the CDC. It was the largest rural increase since the agency began tracking such data in 1999. The rise came close to the 30% spike in homicide rates in metropolitan areas in 2020. So 25 and 30% respectively. Not a huge difference there, is it? Now, the CDC has not been able to analyze 2021 homicide data yet, but in some rural counties, murder rates remained high last year, while on others, they have begun to recede along with COVID, according to data from local law enforcement. So now there's more data. And by the way, this comes from a group that I never thought I would quote positively, but in this case, this analysis is correct. Third Way. I know. I have my issues with Third Way, but wait. They had a report on March 15th titled this, The Red State Murder Problem. In it, they found that despite a media narrative to the contrary, this is a problem that afflicts Republican-run cities and states as much or more than the Democratic bastions. Strange bedfellows indeed. True. They also found that in 2020, per capita murder rates were 40% higher in states won by Donald Trump than those won by Joe Biden, and 8 out of the 10 states with the highest murder rates in 2020 voted for the Republican presidential nominee in every election in this century. So, when you look at crime, can you say it went up? Yes, of course, that's a fact. It's objectively true. Crime went up all across the country. Again, mostly during the pandemic. But you can't say it's because of Democrats. You can't say it's because of progressives. You can't blame defund the police because nobody defunded the police. Joe Biden gave more money to the police. Lots more money. Democrats voted for more police. And I'm somebody who does want to defund the police. This is ridiculous. And yet, again, every news outlet from Fox to CNN to the New York Times, local newspapers, they run ridiculous headlines. U.S. cities hit all-time murder records. Even though it was actually higher back in the 80s. But as a result, Republicans, Fox News, they have taken this narrative and they have ran it as a Democrat problem. Democrats, soft on crime. In fact, they blame it on Democrats being soft on crime, and have even referred to the New York District Attorney's approach as hug-a-thug. Not kidding. Many other news stories outside of Fox have also reported that police reform is responsible for this rise in murder and pointed to cities like New York and LA. Again, not true. Murder rates are far higher in Trump voting red states than Biden voting blue states, and sometimes murder rates are highest in cities with Republican mayors. As of 2020, 11 out of the 50 largest cities in the U.S. were run by right-wingers, Republicans, and 10 saw a spike in murder since the pandemic began. For example, Jacksonville, a city with a Republican mayor, had 128 more murders in 2020 than San Francisco. A city with a Democrat mayor, despite their comparable populations. The homicide rate in Nancy Pelosi's San Francisco was half that of House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy's Bakersfield. A city with a Republican mayor that overwhelmingly voted for Trump. And an October 20th article published in The Atlantic also reported on an exhaustive new study from the Center for American Progress that compares cities that have elected so-called progressive prosecutors, places with whose district attorneys continue to pursue more traditional approaches. So now one of them, of course, is Larry Krasner, right? So I think he's done a great job. Now, senior editor Ronald Brownstein explained that in the study, they found that murder rates increased in a smaller share of cities with progressive prosecutors, 56%, than in those with traditional prosecutors, 68%, or prosecutors who fell in the middle, 62%. So, from the article, Counter Conventional Wisdom, the study found that homicides over recent years increased less rapidly in cities with progressive prosecutors than in those with more traditional DAs. So it's not the prosecutors that are so-called, soft on crime. No, you actually have better outcomes when you have progressives. It also found no meaningful differences between cities with progressive or traditional DAs in trends for larceny and robbery. Zachary Pleat of Media Matters, who wrote this article, asked Todd Fogelsong, a fellow in residence at the University of Toronto, and one of the co-authors of the study. And here's what Todd told him. I think it's really important to emphasize the extent to which we looked for a relationship and found none between a prosecutor's commitment to reform and crime rates. So reforming police, reforming our criminal justice system does not increase crime. It actually makes outcomes better. So that said, let's finally address the last thing, and that is public opinion. Remember, there's so many polls out there where, and this is maddening because I see it everywhere, from the economy to crime, right? Where the public trusts Republicans in these issues more than the left, more than Democrats or progressives. They have an issue. Some examples. Polling shows, this is according to the New York Times, that voters tend to see Republicans as stronger on public safety by a margin of 10 percentage points. Voters nationwide also said they agreed more with Republicans on crime and policing, according to a New York Times Siena College poll from September. Politico also reported that Republicans are leaning into fears that are evident in polling. About 3/4 of respondents said violent crime is increasing nationally. The Hill cited 3 polls on the importance of crime to voters for the upcoming elections, then added another September 23 to October 3rd Reuters poll, found that more voters think that Republicans are better suited to deal with crime than Democrats, 39 to 30%. So the reason that I cite that is because there is a direct relationship to the media narrative on crime that I just illustrated and the polling on the issue. If you were informed by media about this, and again, you are listening to mainstream outlets, then you're going to come away with the impression that Democrats are soft on crime. Again, not true. Joe Biden, and I criticized him for this, authored the crime bill, a racist piece of legislation that has negatively impacted minorities across the country. Democrats soft on crime? No. Disastrous. Disastrous. Not true at all. Not true. So, but you see this, right? They'll see all the headlines and they'll see these same outlets that are supposedly liberal media blaming the Democrats. And they'll think, well, obviously Democrats are soft on crime. They're terrible on crime. I guess I'll vote for Republicans if I want to feel safe. Look, that's how the media has an effect. Now, if media were honest, then they would tell people what the reality of what's going on. There's almost no difference. But instead, they're doing dishonest narratives. And if they didn't do these dishonest narratives, well, then the polls wouldn't be so favorable to Republicans. Because as we see from the data, Republicans are no better in stopping crime. In reality, the difference between Republicans and Democrats on crime is that the right wing, Republicans, are just far more punitive in their response to crime. Far, far more punitive. Okay. All right. Heavy day. Heavy day. Jules points out, defund the police has replaced the new Willie Horton hysteria. 100%. 100%. Okay. So, let's read some super chats. And by the way, if you haven't already, please give us a like here. It helps us out greatly. All right. Madi Darno, thank you for the very kind $2. Everyone's well. Yes, I hope you're all well. Crypto Mojito, thank you for becoming a member, a supporter of the show. Appreciate that. You can do so as well by hitting the join below. It helps keep us, like I said, independent. Greg 1118, thank you for the very kind $10 super chat with no message. Appreciate it. Appreciate the support. Love you all. That said, that's it. All we got for you. Thank you all again. Make sure to tune in tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, as usual. And have a great night. Remember, love you all, and change you.
Sexual anarchy.
Peachtree dish.
Well, I do not consent.
Up your woke moralism.
Fired! Fired!
Internet.
Disappointed! It's not human intelligence!
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.